I've been a park ranger in Yellowstone for over 20 years, and I've seen more than my fair share of strange occurrences. Missing hikers, wild animal attacks, and unexplained weather shifts. Those are common. But there's something about the deeper parts of the park that most people don't know about. Something old and dangerous lurking beneath the stunning beauty of this place. The morning everything changed started off normally. I was stationed at a remote outpost near the Norris Geyser Basin, a location not frequented by most tourists. Fewer visitors meant I had more time to enjoy the serenity of Yellowstone's wilderness. That week, however, we had reports of multiple hikers going missing in the backcountry surrounding the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. 3 groups, all unrelated, vanished without a trace. My name's Sam Bennett, and after 2 decades in this job, I thought I'd seen everything. But Yellowstone, as much as I love it, has a way of reminding you that some mysteries are older than mankind. The missing hikers' cases were piling up, and with no bodies, no signs of struggle, not even a lost backpack, we were stumped. The park was entering fall, and the shadows of the jagged ridges and geothermal features seemed to stretch endlessly over the rugged terrain. That day, I was tasked with heading deeper into the park near one of the less-traveled canyons, Hell-Roaring Canyon, a place few ventured due to its treacherous cliffs and the eerie feeling that clung to the air, especially after dark. I had a partner, Ethan, a newer ranger, but tough. We set out early in the morning, equipped with GPS, satellite phones, and our standard gear. Our goal was to scout out Hell-Roaring Canyon and see if we could find any signs of the missing hikers. The park's official stance was that they likely got lost or succumbed to the elements, but I had my doubts. After trekking for miles through the dense forests and climbing through uneven terrain, we reached the edge of the canyon. The air here felt different, heavy. I've spent enough time in the wild to trust my instincts, and they were screaming that something was wrong. "Does this place feel off to you?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. I nodded. "Keep your guard up. We'll check around the edge and then move down into the canyon." We followed a barely visible trail, skirting the edge of the towering cliffs. Hell-Roaring Canyon stretched out below us, deep and jagged. Steam from distant geysers rose in the distance, adding to the surreal atmosphere. As we moved, I started to notice things. Scattered bones, not animal but human, old, weathered, like they'd been there for years, hidden among the rocks. Ethan was about to radio in the discovery when we heard it, a low, guttural growl echoing from the canyon below. The sound reverberated through the rocks, primal and bone-chilling. "What the hell was that?" Ethan whispered. "I don't know," I said, my voice tight. "But we need to stay alert. That wasn't any animal I've ever heard." We descended into the canyon cautiously, our flashlights cutting through the growing gloom. The deeper we went, the more unsettling the environment became. The canyon walls felt like they were closing in, and the steam from the nearby geysers created an eerie, shifting mist. About an hour into our search, we found something that stopped us cold, a campsite. Tents shredded, gear scattered, and blood. A lot of blood, but no bodies. "Jesus," Ethan muttered, kneeling beside a torn sleeping bag. "What could have done this?" I didn't answer. My mind was racing. The amount of damage here. Whatever did this, it wasn't a bear or a wolf. This was something else. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled slightly. Yellowstone is known for its geothermal activity, but this wasn't the same. It felt intentional, like something was moving beneath us. "We need to leave," I said, grabbing Ethan's arm. "Now!" We turned to head back up the canyon, but that's when we heard it again, the growl. This time it was closer, much closer. Before we could react, something emerged from the mist ahead of us. At first it was just a shadow, tall, impossibly thin, and hunched. Then the mist parted, revealing its full form. It stood at least 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs that ended in claw-like hands. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its eyes were pure black, empty, soulless. For a split second, neither of us moved, paralyzed by fear. Then it let out a bone-rattling screech and charged. "Run!" I shouted, shoving Ethan toward the trail. We sprinted up the rocky path, the creature behind us moving with terrifying speed, despite its unnatural appearance. Rocks crumbled beneath our feet, and the canyon's jagged walls seemed to close in as the temperature dropped sharply. I could hear its breath, ragged and wet, closing the distance. We were nearing the top when Ethan stumbled. I turned back just in time to see the creature's claws swipe at him, but I fired my flare gun directly at its face. It recoiled, shrieking in pain, giving me enough time to drag Ethan to his feet. We ran like hell, not stopping until we were well clear of the canyon. But the thing was still down there, watching, waiting. When we finally reached the safety of our vehicle, Ethan collapsed against the door, gasping for breath. "What the hell was that?" he panted, wide-eyed and shaken. "I don't know," I said, glancing back toward the canyon. "But it's ancient, older than this park, maybe even older than mankind." We radioed in our report, but I knew no one would believe us. Missing hikers were one thing, but a creature that could tear through people like paper? The Park Service wouldn't acknowledge that. But I knew the truth. Hell-roaring Canyon wasn't just another remote part of Yellowstone. It was something more, a gateway to something primal and dark. And the disappearances? They weren't accidents. They were sacrifices. Since that day, I've never gone back to that part of the park. And I warn others to stay away. But Yellowstone is vast, and curiosity gets the best of people. The missing cases keep piling up, and deep down, I know it's not over. Because whatever we encountered in that canyon, it's still there, waiting for its next victim. When I first got the assignment to work as a park ranger in the Grand Canyon, I was beyond thrilled. The vastness of the place, the towering cliffs, the silence in the deep crevices. There was a mystery to it that called to me. My name is Ben Keller, and as a new recruit, I knew I had a lot to learn. But I never expected that my first months patrolling the canyon would push me to the brink of sanity. The Bright Angel Trail was where I spent most of my early days, guiding tourists, helping hikers, and making sure no one did anything stupid near the cliff edges. The canyon's beauty could be deceptive, and too many people underestimated the dangers of dehydration or getting lost on one of the offshoot trails. I was grateful to be assigned to such a well-traveled path. But everything changed after I was transferred to cover night shifts in the more remote areas of the park. That's when things started to get strange. The first time I noticed something off was during a routine solo patrol around the isolated North Rim. It was nearing sunset, and the shadows of the canyon walls stretched impossibly long, swallowing up the trails in darkness. I was hiking along a lesser-known path, near a place the older rangers called the Whispering Gorge. It wasn't on any official map, but the name came up in conversation now and then. They spoke about it in half-jokes, warning new rangers to stay away after dark, but I thought it was just hazing. That night, as the last light of day bled out of the sky, I noticed something odd. Tracks. Not animal tracks, not human tracks either. Something in between. They were large, wider than my own boot prints, and spread far apart, as if whatever made them was moving on two legs, but unnaturally so. The prints were deep, pressed into the dirt with a weight that didn't make sense for their size. I knelt down, running my fingers through the indents, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. A trick of the light, maybe? But the sun had dipped low enough that the canyon's shadow was now consuming everything, and the sense of unease crept over me like a heavy fog. The wind picked up, blowing through the canyon with a low, haunting howl. I decided it was time to head back to the ranger station before dark fully set in. I radioed in, but the signal crackled with static, cutting off my transmission. Typical, I thought, shaking off the chill crawling up my spine. As I started back up the trail, I heard it, a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind swirling through the canyon walls. But then, it came again. Clearer. My name. Ben. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I spun around, scanning the canyon floor behind me. There was no one, just the vast emptiness of the gorge. But the whisper had been too clear, too intentional to be just the wind. I called out, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the enormity of the canyon. "Hello, is someone out there?" Only silence answered me. The temperature had dropped sharply, and the darkness was closing in fast. I quickened my pace, adrenaline pulsing in my veins. I needed to get back. As I reached a narrow passage that led out of the gorge, I heard something behind me, footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing against the canyon walls. I whipped around, flashlight in hand, casting a beam over the rocky terrain. Nothing. But the footsteps were there, getting closer. It felt like I was being hunted. I started to run. The trail was uneven, rocks jutting up and making the path treacherous. But I didn't care. Whatever was behind me was closing in fast. I could feel its presence, the weight of its gaze boring into my back. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing my name over and over. Ben! 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 My heart pounded in my chest, and every instinct screamed for me to keep moving. I didn't stop until I reached the ranger station, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against it, gasping for air, sweat pouring down my face despite the cold. The whispers had stopped, but I could still hear the faint echo of them in my mind. Over the next few days, I tried to convince myself that it had been exhaustion, maybe the altitude playing tricks on me. But the tracks I had seen, the footsteps I had heard, they felt too real. I reported the incident to the head ranger, but he brushed it off, telling me that the canyon had a way of getting inside your head if you weren't careful. He said the locals had legends about the canyon, old stories about ancient spirits that roamed the deepest parts, but they were just that, stories. I wasn't so sure. A week later, I was back on patrol, this time heading toward a remote section near the Colorado River. It was a place few ventured, even among the rangers. The deeper you went into the canyon, the more isolated you became. No cell service, no radios. It was just you and the canyon. The perfect place for something to hide. As night fell, I camped near the riverbank, setting up my tent and building a small fire. The stars above were brilliant, lighting up the sky like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The canyon was eerily quiet, the only sound the gentle rush of the river. I should have felt at peace, but instead, that same sense of unease lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Around midnight, I heard it again. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the canyon's walls. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it toward the source, but all I could see were the towering rock formations. The sound grew louder, closer. Ben! The whisper was unmistakable this time. It was right behind me. I spun around, heart racing, and saw something moving in the shadows. A figure, tall and gaunt, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, human, but not. Its limbs were long and twisted, its skin pale as moonlight, and its face was ancient, like something that had been buried beneath the earth for centuries. I backed away, but it kept coming, moving with an unnatural grace, its eyes locked on mine. I tripped over a rock and fell, scrambling to get away as the thing loomed over me. The whispers were deafening now, filling my head, drowning out all rational thought. Just as it reached for me, there was a loud crack, the sound of rocks breaking away from the canyon wall. The figure stopped, its head snapping toward the noise. For a moment, it hesitated, and in that split second, I bolted, running as fast as I could toward the river. I didn't stop until I reached the water's edge, where I collapsed, gasping for breath. I looked back, expecting to see the figure still following me, but it was gone. The whispers had stopped. I didn't wait to find out what it wanted. I packed up my gear and made my way back to the main trail, not stopping until I was out of the canyon. When I finally returned to the station, I filed my report. But no one believed me. They chalked it up to exhaustion, stress, maybe a wild animal. But I know what I saw, and I'm not the only one. The Grand Canyon is a place of beauty and wonder, but there are parts of it that no one should venture into. Something ancient lives there, hiding in the dark corners, waiting. The canyon holds secrets, secrets that should remain buried. I haven't gone back to the Whispering Gorge, but every now and then, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear it, whispering my name. I've always loved the serenity of the forest, its stillness, the gentle sway of the trees in the wind, and the way nature reclaims everything. But there are places where nature seems to hide something much darker, something malevolent. And as a park ranger, you learn to respect the untamed. My name is Sam, and I've been a ranger for nearly 10 years. I was stationed in a remote, heavily forested area of the Pacific Northwest, a place known for its vast wilderness, wildlife, and the occasional hiker or camper. The locals, though, had other stories. They spoke in hushed tones about the Watcher's Woods, a stretch of forest where even the most seasoned rangers avoided venturing after dark. They claimed it was cursed or haunted, but I chalked it up to campfire stories meant to keep kids in line. It wasn't until last fall that I began to believe those stories. It started with a call about a missing hiker. I'd handled dozens of cases like this before, so I wasn't overly concerned. People often got lost on the trails, thinking they were more experienced than they were. This time, it was a man in his early 30s named Ryan, who had been solo camping near the eastern edge of the park, close to the area known as the Watcher's Woods. I set out in the late afternoon, figuring I'd find him before nightfall. The sky was overcast, casting a grayish pall over the forest. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew denser, and the air turned unnervingly still. No birds, no wind, just an eerie silence that clung to everything. I radioed back to the station as I crossed into the Watcher's Woods, telling them where I was. My supervisor's voice crackled back, urging caution. "That area's off limits after dark, Sam. Be careful." I chuckled, trying to hide my unease. "Roger that, but I'll find him soon." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the trees, I found Ryan's campsite. It was in disarray. His tent was shredded, gear strewn about as if something, or someone, had torn through it in a frenzy. But there was no sign of him, no blood, no tracks leading away. Just an abandoned camp in the heart of the most feared section of the park. My instincts told me to head back, but I couldn't leave without at least searching a bit further. Grabbing my flashlight, I ventured deeper into the woods, where the trees seemed to close in tighter. The forest felt alive, like it was watching me. That's when I found the symbols, carved into the trees in a wide circle around a small clearing. They weren't any markings I'd seen before, primitive, almost ritualistic. A chill ran down my spine as I scanned the area, my heart beating faster. I've never believed in the supernatural, but there was something about those carvings that felt wrong. I called out Ryan's name, my voice sounding small in the vast, silent forest. For a moment, I thought I heard something. Footsteps? A faint rustling, maybe? I spun around, pointing my flashlight into the dark, but there was nothing there. The silence returned, heavier than before. Then, I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried on the wind. It didn't sound like Ryan's voice. It was something else, something older. I shined my light towards the source, and that's when I saw it. A figure stood just at the edge of the clearing, cloaked in the shadows of the trees. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its form seemed to blend with the forest itself. I called out, but the figure didn't respond. It just stood there watching me. The flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, the figure moved. Closer. My breath caught in my throat as I backed away, my instincts screaming to run. But my legs felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. When the light came back, the figure was gone. I didn't waste any more time. I turned and sprinted back towards the campsite, my flashlight bouncing wildly in the dark. Behind me, I could hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, matching my pace. Whatever it was following me. As I reached the edge of the clearing, I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I swung my light around, scanning the trees, but there was nothing. Just silence. I radioed back to the station, my voice shaking. "I think there's someone out here with me," I whispered. There was static for a moment before my supervisor's voice came through. "Get out of there, Sam, now!" I didn't need to be told twice. I ran as fast as I could, crashing through the underbrush, branches slashing at my arms and face. I didn't stop until I broke through the tree line and onto a familiar trail. Only then did I glance back. The woods were still, but I knew something was watching me from the shadows. I reported everything when I got back to the station. The destroyed camp, the strange symbols, the figure in the woods. We organized a search party the next morning, but we never found Ryan. His body was never recovered. The locals say the Watcher of the Woods doesn't like intruders, that it takes people who wander too deep. And though I'd always laughed at those stories, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that Ryan wasn't the first to disappear in those woods. And he won't be the last. I haven't set foot in the Watcher's Woods since, but sometimes, on quiet nights, I can still hear those whispers on the wind. And I know, deep down, that something is still out there.